Today we are making pistachio macarons. So these macarons can be made in the form of pistachio, or you can also use it to use any of your favorite nuts, such as hazelnuts, cashews, walnuts, pecans. So to get started, we're going to take our pistachios. So I've just weighed those out. Now I'm using whole pistachios. It's quite hard to find pistachios already ground into a meal. So we're going to be doing that today together. So how I like to do that is, because it's such a small quantity, I'm using a small food processor. This is just the one that came with my immersion blender. And you want to make sure that it's nice and dry. So just grab yourself some kitchen towel and just ensure that it's really super dry. And to that we're going to add our pistachios or your nut of choice. And now if we just grind this, just the pistachios on their own, you do run the risk of turning it into a butter. So we want to add something in there that's going to prevent that from happening. So we're going to take some of our confectioner's sugar that's going to be sifted in with it anyway, and I'm going to put like a spoonful of that in there, kind of like a heaped spoonful. We're going to get the lid on and blend this until like a fine meal. Okay, so that looks great. Now I'm going to transfer my pistachio meal onto a tray. Just onto a baking sheet lined with some baking paper. Get all of that in there. Such a great color. And we're also going to add our portion of almond meal. So this recipe, we're not using 100% of the pistachios because we'd be ending up with an extremely expensive macaron. We're using it for the flavor and the color. So we are doing a bit of a mix between the almond meal and the pistachio meal. So you just mix those two together and spread out onto your tray. And now we're going to transfer this into the oven at 95 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes, and this is going to help dry out our meal, especially if you're working in a kitchen which has a very humid temperature, or you might be storing your nut meals in your refrigerator where it's accumulating a lot of moisture. I know from my reading here, I've got it tells me what the ambient humidity is in my room, and today it's 57%, which is a little on the high side when we are making macarons. So to ensure that we do all of these steps that are going to prevent the things that we don't want happening in our macarons, like explosions or like oily tops and many of the different things that we get fails with our macarons, we want to make sure that we dry out our almond meal or the nut meal that we are using. So into the oven, and 30 minutes at 95 degrees Celsius. And once that's done, we'll just let it cool before we continue with our recipe. So for our pistachio macarons, our pistachio and almond flour have now come out of the oven. So we're going to start sifting this into a large bowl. Along with our measurement of confectioner's sugar. And that's our remaining confectioner's sugar, as we used a very small amount of it when we were grinding up those pistachios. So we'll give this a good sift to ensure we have nice, smooth macaron tops. Okay, so now moving on to our meringue. So we have our gerbe mixture, and I'm just going to add 1 spoonful of our sugar measurement for our meringue, just to help disperse those powders. Just mix that together. And into your measurement of water. And we're going to beat this up for a couple of minutes until everything is dissolved. Now everything is nice and foamy and our powders have been dissolved, we're going to add a third of our remaining sugar for our meringue and continue beating on a low-medium speed until we achieve the soft peak stage. Once the soft peak stage is achieved, we're going to slowly add our remaining sugar a spoonful at a time until we achieve the stiff peak stage. And you want to beat this on a medium to medium high speed. Now, if you want to add a little bit of food coloring once you achieve the stiff peak stage, you can do so now. And I like to just add it with a toothpick. So because we are doing the pistachio, I'm going to be adding just a tiny bit of our green and a little bit of yellow as well. All right, let's mix this up. Maybe a tiny bit more. All right, so that looks like a lovely pistachio color to me. I'm happy with that. I still want to keep it quite pastel-y. Now we're going to start adding our dry mixture, so our pistachio and almond meal, confectioner's sugar. So I want to do like half of that, and we're going to fold this through. Okay, add the remaining. Okay, so once all of that is combined, we can now do our macaronage. So deflate our batter until we get the correct consistency. So we're just pressing it against the side of the bowl. We can also press it against the bowl at the bottom as well in a zigzag pattern. And we want to continue doing this until we get sort of like a lava-like or ribbon consistency where we can just do a figure 8. Okay, so I'm happy with this consistency. So we're going to transfer to a piping bag now. So we have our guide here, and to that, I'm going to reuse this paper from before. So just pop down a little bit of that batter so the paper can stick to it. And we can start piping our macarons. I'm going to transfer it over to our tray. I like to put a little bit of batter in each corner, slide it over. Now to get those excess air bubbles off and to ensure we have a nice flat top, we're going to start tapping underneath. And one nice slam. Now we're going to go around, and if there's any larger air bubbles, we can get those out with our toothpick. Some may have just come to the surface. Go through those. One last little tap. Now we can set that aside for the tops to dry until they're touch dry before they go into the oven for baking. Now that we have nice dry tops on our macarons, we can pop these in our preheated oven to 135 degrees Celsius for 5 minutes to develop their feet. our macarons have developed their feet, you want to open the door to your oven just a crack, and we're going to let this cool down for 5 minutes before we continue baking at our lower temperature. So it's been 5 minutes, we're going to get our oven back on. So we're going to set it to 100 degrees Celsius. And we're going to do the time for about 15 minutes and then we'll check it after that. So 100 degrees, minutes. And then we'll check them to see if they need a little bit more time. Let's check our macarons, see if they are ready. So we want to see that they're starting to lift off the paper, and I can see they're already lifting off. So that looks good. Let's take one from the center. See, if they are still sticking just slightly, that's not a problem. So we're going to remove these trays. Check this tray. Yep, these look good, beautiful. So we can set those aside to cool down before we transfer those into filling, or you can put them in the freezer. So we're just gonna let those cool off on our trolley or on your cooling rack. I've got them over here, cooling. And we will come back to finish them off. So now we're making our pistachio French buttercream. So I've prepared my mousseline or French buttercream base, and if you want to watch that video, you can just check it out in your dashboard. And all we're going to be doing now is adding our pistachio paste. Now you can make this yourself or you can commercially buy it. I just made it myself in my blender. I just blended up some nuts with a small amount of vegetable oil, and then I had my pistachio paste. Now just mix everything together. And there you have your pistachio mousseline French buttercream. And you can deflate any of those larger air bubbles that may have occurred during that whipping process. Remove your macarons out of the freezer if you have done so, or after if they've cooled, and we're going to start matching them up. Now it's time to fill your macaron shells with your pistachio cream. Ensure you keep a hole in the center. Now fill your macaron centers with the lemon confit. Match your macaron shells back up, sandwich them together. And transfer to a tray. Now seal your container or tray well and transfer to the refrigerator to mature overnight for 24 hours before enjoying.